The heat between us was electric, our bodies moving in perfect sync across the studio floor. His hands guided my hips as we swayed to the rhythm, but this wasn't just dancing anymore. Every brush of his fingers sent fire through my skin. Every whispered instruction in my ear made my breath catch. When he pulled me closer, pressing my back against his chest, I felt something shift between us, something that had nothing to do with choreography and everything to do with the way his breath felt against my neck. "Feel the music," he murmured, his voice rough with something that wasn't just about dance. I did feel it, but I felt him more. Enjoying the heat so far? Smash that like button and hit subscribe. This is just getting started, and trust me, you won't want to miss what happens. Next! I never expected my friend Sarah's casual suggestion to change everything. "You should try Finley's class," she'd said over coffee, scrolling through her phone. "He's incredible, really knows how to move a body." The way she said it made something flutter in my chest, but I brushed it off. I needed something new, something to shake up my routine, and dance seemed perfect. The studio was tucked away in a converted warehouse in Milwaukee's Arts District, all exposed brick and floor-to-ceiling mirrors. When I walked in that first evening, the space hummed with low music and the soft thud of feet against hardwood. And then I saw him. Finley moved like liquid fire, his body flowing from one position to the next with an ease that made my mouth go dry. Tall, lean muscle wrapped in a fitted black tank, dark hair that caught the studio lights, and eyes that seemed to see right through you. When those eyes found mine across the room, something electric passed between us. "You must be Nova," he said, approaching with that same fluid grace. His voice was deeper than I'd expected, with just a hint of roughness around the edges. "Sarah mentioned you might drop by." I nodded, suddenly aware of how my workout clothes clung to my curves, how his gaze seemed to take in every detail. "She said you were the best teacher in the city." A slow smile curved his lips. "We'll see about that. Ready to move?" The next hour was torture in the most delicious way. Every correction of my posture involved his hands on my body, adjusting, my shoulders guiding my hips, showing me how to let the rhythm flow through me. Each touch was professional, necessary, but the way my skin heated under his fingers was anything but. "You're thinking too much," he said during a particularly challenging sequence. We were working on partner movements, and I kept stumbling over the transitions. Dance isn't about thinking, it's about feeling. He positioned himself behind me, his chest barely grazing my back. "Close your eyes. Feel the beat." His hands found my waist, and I bit back a gasp at the contact. "Let me guide you." The music washed over us, something slow and hypnotic with a heavy bass that seemed to pulse through the floor and into our bodies. Finley's hands were warm and sure, moving me in ways that felt both foreign and completely natural. My hips swayed under his guidance, my body learning to trust his lead. "Better," he murmured against my ear, and I shivered despite the heat building between us. "Much better." When the song ended, I opened my eyes to find us reflected in the mirror, him towering behind me, my body curved against his, both of us breathing harder than the simple movements should have warranted. Our eyes met in the reflection, and for a moment, the world stopped. "That's enough for tonight," he said, stepping back, but not before I caught the tension in his voice. I gathered my things on shaky legs, hyper-aware of his presence as he tidied the studio. As I reached for the door, his voice stopped me. "Same time tomorrow?" I turned, finding him leaning against the mirror, arms crossed, watching me with an intensity that made my pulse race. "Definitely." The next few classes followed the same pattern, professional. Instruction laced with moments of electricity that left me aching for more. We worked on different styles, from sensual Latin rhythms to contemporary flows that required trust and connection. Each session, the boundaries between instruction and something deeper blurred a little more. "You're a natural," Finley said after a particularly intense session. We'd been working on lifts, and his hands had been all over me, supporting my weight, guiding my movements, steadying me when I wobbled. "Your body responds beautifully to direction." The compliment sent heat flooding through me, and I caught the double meaning in his words. We were alone in the studio, the late hour having driven away the other students. The mirrors reflected our flushed faces, our bodies still humming with the energy of movement. "Thank you," I managed, very aware of how close we were standing. "You're an amazing teacher." Something flickered in his eyes. "There's more I could teach you, if you're interested." My breath caught. "What kind of things?" Instead of answering with words, he moved to the sound system and switched the music to something slower, more intimate. The bass thrummed through the floor, and I felt it in my bones. "Private lessons," he said, extending his hand. "Different kind of movement." I took his hand without hesitation. This time, when he pulled me against him, there was no pretense of instruction. His body was solid and warm against mine, his hands more possessive as they settled on my hips. We moved together in the dim studio lighting, the mirrors reflecting our silhouettes as we swayed to the hypnotic rhythm. "I've been wanting to do this since that first night," he confessed, his lips brushing my temple. "The way you move, the way you respond to touch, it's been driving me crazy." I tilted my head back to meet his gaze. "Then why did you wait?" His answer was to kiss me, deep and hungry, his hands tangling in my hair. I melted into him, months of tension finally finding release. When we broke apart, both breathing hard, his forehead rested against mine. "Because once we cross this line, there's no going back," he said. I smiled, running my hands over his chest, feeling his heart racing beneath my palms. Who said I wanted to go back? That was all the permission he needed. His mouth claimed mine. Again, more demanding this time, his hands roaming over my body with the same confidence he used when teaching. Every touch was deliberate, measured, designed to draw responses from me like music from an instrument. He backed me against the mirror, the cool glass a stark contrast to the heat of his body pressed against mine. His lips trailed down my neck, finding that sensitive spot that made me gasp and arch into him. "So responsive," he murmured against my skin. "I love how you move for me." His hands found the hem of my tank top, fingers grazing the skin underneath. "Tell me what you want, Nova." "You," I breathed, surprised by my own boldness. "I want you." The tank top disappeared, followed by his. In the mirror, I caught glimpses of us. My back arched as his mouth worked magic on my skin, his muscles flexing as he held me against him. It was like watching the most intimate dance, our bodies learning each other's rhythms. His hands were everywhere, skimming over my ribs, tracing the curve of my spine, mapping territory he'd only been able to glimpse during our lessons. Each touch sent shivers through me, building a tension that had nothing to do with choreography and everything to do with pure need. "The way you feel," he said, his voice rough with desire. "Even better than I imagined." I couldn't form words, could only respond with my body, pressing closer, letting my hands explore the planes of his chest, the strength in his shoulders. When he lifted me, my legs wrapped around his waist instinctively, and he carried me to the center of the studio floor. The hardwood was cool against my back as he lowered me down, but his body above me was pure heat. He took his time, worshipping my skin with lips and tongue, drawing sounds from me that echoed in the empty studio. Every kiss, every caress was like a new dance move, something beautiful and intense that we created together. "Look at us," he said, nodding toward the mirrors that surrounded us. I turned my head, gasping at the sight. We were reflected from every angle, his dark head bent over my pale skin, my hands tangled in his hair, our bodies intertwined like we were born to fit together. It was erotic and beautiful and overwhelming all at once. "Beautiful," he murmured, his hands skimming over my curves. "You're absolutely beautiful." When he kissed me again, it was with a hunger that matched my own. Our bodies moved together with the same fluid grace we'd found in dance, but this was more primal, more real. He knew exactly how to touch me, where to apply pressure, how to make me shudder and gasp his name. The tension built between us like a crescendo, each movement bringing us closer to something that felt inevitable. His breath was hot against my ear as he whispered encouragement, praise, promises of what was to come. "Feel the rhythm," he said, echoing his earlier instruction, but with an entirely different meaning now. "Let it move through you." I did, surrendering to the sensation, to the way our bodies moved together in perfect synchronization. Every touch, every kiss, every whispered word was part of an intricate choreography that we created in the moment. When the climax hit, it was like the finale of the most intense dance, overwhelming, beautiful, leaving me breathless and trembling in his arms. He held me through it, his own breathing ragged, his body shaking with the force of his own release. We lay there on the studio floor, our bodies cooling in the night air, hearts gradually slowing to a normal rhythm. The mirrors reflected our entwined forms, and I marveled at how right it looked, how perfectly we fit together. "That was," I started, then trailed off, unable to find words. "Incredible," he finished, pressing a soft kiss to my shoulder. "You're incredible." As we slowly gathered ourselves and our scattered clothes, reality began to creep back in. What had just happened was beyond anything I'd experienced, but it was also complicated. Sarah had recommended this class, and she was friends with Finley. What would she think if she knew? "Hey," Finley said, seeming to sense my thoughts. He cupped, my face in his hands making me look at him. "Don't overthink this. What we just shared, it's between us." I nodded, but the worry lingered. As we left the studio together, his hand warm on the small of my back, I couldn't shake the feeling that everything had changed. The next morning, Sarah called bright and early, her voice bubbling with excitement. "So, how was your first week at Finley's?" she asked. "I bet you're loving it. He's got such a way of bringing out the best in people." I nearly choked on my coffee. "It's educational. I knew you'd love him. He's amazing, right? Such a professional, but also so passionate about what he does. I've been taking his classes for 2 years now, and I still learn something new every time." 2 years. She'd been going to his classes for 2 years, and nothing had happened between them, which meant either Finley was incredibly professional with his other students, or there was something specific about me that had broken through his usual boundaries. "Yeah, he's very hands-on," I said carefully. "Exactly. That's what makes him such a great teacher. He really knows how to guide your body into the right positions. Speaking of which, are you going to tonight's class? I might drop by if I can get off work early." My heart stopped. "You're coming tonight?" "Maybe." "Why?" I scrambled for an excuse. "Oh, no reason. Just, I'm still pretty new, so I might feel weird having someone I know watch me stumble around." Sarah laughed. "Trust me, we've all been there, but don't worry about it. You'll be great. And if I do make it, I promise not to laugh if you trip over your own feet." After she hung up, I stared at my phone, mind racing. What if she did show up? What if she saw the way Finley and I looked at each other, the tension that crackled between us? What if she noticed that we moved together like lovers rather than teacher and student? I spent the day alternating between excitement about seeing Finley again and panic about potentially being caught. By the time evening rolled around, I was a bundle of nerves. The studio was more crowded than usual when I arrived, but I didn't see Sarah among the familiar faces. Finley was warming up in the center of the room, and when his eyes found mine, that same electric current passed between us. "Nova," he said, approaching with that predatory grace. "Ready for tonight's lesson?" "Depends on what you're planning to teach," I replied, proud of how steady my voice sounded despite the way my pulse was racing. His smile was slow and dangerous. "Oh, I have a few new moves in mind." The class started normally enough. Warm-ups, basic techniques, partnered exercises with rotating partners. But I was hyper-aware of every moment Finley's hands were on me, every correction that brought his body close to mine. The other students faded into background noise as we created our own private bubble of tension and heat. "You're distracted tonight," he murmured during a particularly intimate sequence where his chest pressed against my back, his breath warm on my neck. "Can you blame me?" I whispered back. His hands tightened on my hips for just a moment before he stepped away, the professional mask sliding back into place. But I caught the promise in his eyes. This wasn't over. As the class wound down and students filtered out, I hung back, pretending to organize my things while waiting for the studio to empty. Finley dismissed the last student with his usual charm, then locked the door behind them. The silence stretched between us, thick with anticipation. He leaned against the sound system, arms crossed, watching me with an intensity that made my skin tingle. "Alone at last," he said, his voice dropping to that rough register that made me shiver. I moved toward him slowly, hips swaying, putting everything I'd learned about movement and rhythm into the simple act of crossing the room. His eyes tracked every step, every subtle shift of my body. "Is this what you had in mind for tonight's private lesson?" I asked, stopping just close enough to feel the heat radiating from his skin. "Among other things," he said, reaching out to trace a finger along my collarbone. "I've been thinking about last night all day, about the way you felt, the sounds you made." His touch was light, almost innocent, but it set my nerve endings on fire. I leaned into him, my hands finding the hard planes of his chest. "Show me," I breathed. "Show me what else you want to teach me." This time he didn't hesitate. His mouth crashed down on mine, hungry and demanding, his hands fisting in my hair. I melted into him, all the tension from the day dissolving into pure need. He spun us around, backing me against the mirror again, and I gasped at the cool glass against my heated skin. His lips trailed fire down my throat, his hands working at the hem of my shirt with practiced efficiency. "I can't stop thinking about you," he confessed against my skin. "About us. About what we did here last night." "Then don't stop," I said, surprising myself with my boldness. "Don't think, just feel." He groaned, his control snapping completely. Clothes disappeared with urgent efficiency, and soon we were skin to skin, the mirrors reflecting our desperate embrace from every angle. It was even more intense than the night before, all pretense stripped away along with our clothing. His hands roamed my body with newfound confidence, mapping every curve, every sensitive spot that made me gasp and arch against him. I was equally eager, exploring the strength in his shoulders, the defined muscles of his abdomen, the way he shuddered when I touched him just right. When he lifted me, my legs wrapped around his waist automatically, and he carried me to the center of the floor. The hardwood was cool against my back, but his body above me was pure fire. "Look at yourself," he said, nodding toward the mirror on the ceiling. "Look how beautiful you are." I gazed up at our reflection, my hair spread across the dark wood, his body covering mine, the flush of desire painting both our skin. It was erotic and intimate and perfect. "Now look at me," he commanded softly, and I met his eyes as he moved with deliberate slowness, making me feel every inch of connection between us. The sensation was overwhelming. The physical pleasure of our bodies moving together, the emotional intimacy of being so completely vulnerable with him, the visual stimulation of our reflection multiplied in every mirror. It was like being inside the most beautiful, sensual dance ever created. We moved together with increasing urgency, finding a rhythm that was uniquely ours. Every thrust, every caress, every whispered word of encouragement was part of an intricate choreography that we improvised in the moment. When the climax hit, it was explosive. My back arched off the floor, his name torn from my lips as waves of pleasure crashed over me. He followed moments later, his body shuddering against mine as he called out my name like a prayer. We lay there afterward, breathing hard, bodies slick with sweat and satisfaction. The mirrors showed us from every angle, sated, beautiful, perfect, together. "I could get used to this," I murmured against his chest. He chuckled, the sound rumbling through his ribcage. "Private lessons with you? Definitely something I want to continue." As we slowly untangled and began to dress, the weight of reality crept back in. This was incredible, beyond anything I'd ever experienced, but it was also complicated. Sarah was my friend, and this was her dance teacher, someone she'd been learning from for years. "What are we doing?" I asked as we gathered our things. Finley paused in pulling on his shirt, studying my face. "What do you want to be doing?" "I don't know," I admitted. "This is amazing, but Sarah doesn't have to know," he said gently. "This is between us. What happens in this studio stays in this studio." I nodded, but part of me wondered if it would be that simple. Could I really keep this secret from my friend? Could I sit across from her at coffee and pretend I hadn't spent the night wrapped around her dance instructor? "Hey," Finley said, tilting my chin up to meet his eyes. "Don't overthink this. We're both adults. We're not hurting anyone. And what we have, it's special." He was right. But as we left the studio together, I couldn't shake the feeling that this was just the beginning of something that would change everything. Over the next few weeks, we fell into a pattern. Regular classes where we maintained the pretense of a professional student-teacher relationship, followed by private sessions that were anything but professional. The studio became our sanctuary, the place where we could be completely ourselves without worrying about judgment or complications. Finley was an attentive lover, patient and generous, always focused on my pleasure as much as his own. He taught me things about my body I'd never known, showed me ways to move and respond that left me breathless and craving more. But it wasn't just physical. We talked for hours afterward, sharing stories and dreams, learning about each other beyond the heat of attraction. I discovered he'd been dancing since childhood, that he'd given up a potential career in professional dance to open the studio and teach others. He learned that I'd been searching for something to fill the emptiness in my routine life, never expecting to find it in his arms. The guilt about Sarah lingered, though. Every time she mentioned the dance class or asked how I was enjoying it, I felt the weight of our secret. She had no idea that her casual recommendation had led to the most intense connection of my life. "You're glowing lately," she commented over lunch one afternoon. "Dance class must really be agreeing with you." If only she knew how much it was agreeing with me. "It's invigorating," I said carefully. "I've been meaning to drop by again, but work's been crazy. Maybe next week." My stomach dropped. "You don't have to." "I want to. I miss it, and I'm curious to see how much you've improved. Finley's probably turned you into a completely different dancer by now." She had no idea how right she was. That night, I told Finley about Sarah's plan to return to class. He was quiet for a long moment, his fingers tracing patterns on my bare shoulder as we lay on the studio floor. "We'll handle it," he said finally. "We're good at pretending during regular classes." But I wasn't so sure. The connection between us had grown stronger with each encounter. Could we really hide the way we looked at each other, the electricity that sparked whenever we touched, even in the most innocent dance move? As if reading my thoughts, he rolled over to face me, his expression serious. "Nova, what we have is real. It's worth protecting." I nodded, but deep down, I wondered how long we could keep this secret, and what would happen when the truth finally came out. The next week passed in a blur of stolen moments and growing tension. Every class felt like a performance, maintaining the facade of teacher and student while fighting the urge to touch him, to let him see in my eyes what he meant to me. When Saturday's class arrived and Sarah walked through the studio door, my heart nearly stopped. She looked exactly the same. Bright smile, workout clothes, water bottle in hand, but everything felt different now. "Nova," she called out, waving enthusiastically. "Ready to show me what you've learned?" I managed a smile and a wave back, hyper-aware of Finley's presence across the room. He was setting up the sound system, but I saw the slight tension in his shoulders, the way his jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. The class began, and for a while, everything seemed normal. Sarah fell back into the rhythm easily, her muscle memory carrying her through the familiar routines. I tried to focus on the movements, on anything other than the way Finley's hands felt when he adjusted my posture or guided my steps. But it was impossible to ignore the electricity between us, the way my skin heated at every innocent touch, the way his breathing changed when he stood close to me. And worse, I was starting to wonder if Sarah noticed. During a partner rotation, I found myself paired with another student, while Finley worked with Sarah. Watching them together, his hands on her waist, guiding her through the same movements he'd taught me, sent an unexpected stab of jealousy through my chest. This was ridiculous. Sarah was my friend, and she'd been coming to these classes long before I ever showed up. But seeing Finley's professional touch on someone else, even someone as innocent as Sarah, made me want to stake my claim. After class, as students filtered out, Sarah lingered to chat with Finley about her technique. I packed my things slowly, not wanting to leave them alone, but not wanting to seem obvious about staying. "You've done amazing work with Nova," Sarah was saying. "She moves completely differently now. More confident, more fluid." "She's a natural," Finley replied, his eyes flicking to me briefly. "Very responsive to instruction." The double meaning in his words sent heat flooding through me, and I saw Sarah glance between us with a curious expression. "Well, I should get going," she said finally. "Same time next week?" "Wouldn't miss it," Finley replied smoothly. After she left, we were alone again, but the atmosphere felt different. Charged, yes, but also tense. "That was," I started. "Torture," he finished, moving toward me with that predatory grace. "Watching. You, wanting to touch you, knowing I couldn't." His hands found my waist, pulling me against him, and all the tension from the evening poured into a desperate kiss. We were more urgent than usual, as if the forced restraint had only intensified our need for each other. But even as we came together with familiar passion, I couldn't shake the memory of Sarah's curious look, the way she'd glanced between us, like she was trying to solve a puzzle. How long could we keep this secret? And what would happen when someone finally figured out that the dance we were really learning had nothing to do with choreography and everything to do with the rhythm of two hearts beating in perfect sync? As Finley moved above me, his body covering mine in the reflection of a dozen mirrors, I knew that whatever happened, I was already in too deep to turn back. This dance, this connection, this beautiful secret we shared, it was worth the risk. But would Sarah see it that way if she ever found out? And more importantly, was I ready to find out? Some secrets are meant to stay hidden in the shadows, but what happens when the spotlight finally finds them? Have you ever risked a friendship for something that felt too good to resist? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I read every single one and love hearing your stories. And if this one got your heart racing, smash that like button, hit subscribe, and ring the notification bell because trust me, you won't want to miss what's coming. Next, until then, keep dancing to your own rhythm.